How's it going guys, Chris here, and today we'll be taking a look at another hero in Overwatch, and this time I'll be focusing on the character Hanzo in the defense category. Being a defensive character, you'll have to utilise Hanzo's abilities to guard objectives and wipe out attacking enemies. He's generally a more difficult character to get the hang of and requires a bit more skill and precision to be able to do well, with a difficulty rating of 3 stars. So Hanzo's a Japanese assassin and bowman, striving to prove himself as a warrior. He's skilled in martial arts, sword fighting and archery, but vowed never to use the sword again after almost killing his brother Genji in a sword fight. Hanzo travels the world perfecting his warrior skills, trying to restore his honour and put the ghost of his past to rest. Now just like many of the other heroes in Overwatch, Hanzo's got 200 health points with no armour or shield. This isn't exactly a great amount, and with no way of regaining health back from his abilities, this means that he's not a very good character to advance forwards on enemy positions, as you're better off staying back and utilising Hanzo's longer range weaponry to take out opponents. The main weapon you'll be using is Hanzo's Stormbow. The bow can draw 1 arrow at a time, and deal a varied amount of damage depending on how drawn the arrow is before being fired. This damage tends to be between a lower amount of 29, all the way up to those higher figures of 125. Drawing the arrow not only affects the damage output, but it also allows the arrow to be fired further too. It's definitely a better option to draw an arrow to its full tension as much as possible, to maximise both damage and range, as it only takes about half a second to do so. Headshots with the Stormbow can be devastating, bumping up that damage output a hell of a lot more, killing most enemies in one shot. Though down to the fast and usually unpredictable movement of some of the characters, these can be very tricky to land. So going for body shots is usually the better option, as you're more likely to hit your target and kill them easier. Though if you do spot a player standing still, or if they're running in a very predictable way, headshots are going to take them out much quicker if you can line up your shot and fire at the appropriate time. The arrows can be withdrawn whenever you want though, by pressing the secondary fire button to put the arrow back away. Another thing to mention about the Stormbow's arrows is that they tend to arch slightly as they travel through the air, so it's best to fire a little higher above an enemy to land shots over longer distances. You'll need to be able to take into account that the arrows have a bit more travel time than a typical bullet, so you might need to adjust your aim and fire slightly in front of an enemy too, if you're taking them out from afar. Because of these two factors, it can quite often make Hanzo a tougher hero to play as, hence that 3-star difficulty rating. Though if you can land those shots, you'll be able to deal huge amounts of damage. The bow is better suited for medium ranges the most, as long range targets can be tricky to hit and you're very vulnerable in close quarters, with no abilities specially suited for short range encounters. Though if another player does get a little bit close for comfort, you could always fire a quick arrow at them to take away a portion of health and then finish them off with melee. Hanzo's passive ability lets him scale vertical walls and literally Spider-Man his way up them, to reach higher vantage points and openings. So long as the surface is flat, Hanzo will be able to climb it by pressing and holding the jump button whilst next to the wall. Releasing the button and pressing it again lets you jump from the wall at any point during the climb. The wall climb ability is a great way to get around the map and reach higher levels that are inaccessible to other players, gaining some better lines of sight for attacking incoming enemies going for objectives, and even allowing you to sneak around side routes and flank the opposing team. Now, other than being able to fire off normal arrows from the Stormbow, you'll also be able to equip a few other kinds of arrow too, and these do different things and help out in a variety of different ways. The Sonic Arrow lets you launch an arrow that contains a sonar tracking device built into it. This highlights enemies in red through walls and surfaces within its detection radius of about 10 meters, and letting both yourself and allies see their position and prepare for attack. Sonic arrows themselves deal the same amount of damage as a normal arrow, though their main function is to be shot at a solid surface, as this will activate the sonar tracking for a brief period of time. These are especially handy for firing at busy choke points and corners to be able to see when a target is about to run round the corner and come into line of sight, and for Hanzo to ready a shot and kill them quickly as they turn said corner. The Sonic arrows have a cooldown time of 20 seconds and are great to use to help both yourself and teammates locate incoming enemies. Another type of arrow that you can fire off too is the scatter arrows, and these function a little bit differently to other variations. Scatter arrows essentially split up into 6 separate arrows at a perpendicular angle in a cone when the original one impacts a surface, and these then ricochet off walls and refract, bouncing off 3 surfaces before disappearing. Each refracting arrow deals 75 damage and can wipe out a ton of health when used correctly. Scatter arrows can be great tools to fire in small rooms and enclosed corridors and openings, as the ricochet effect can be highly lethal in confined spaces. Scatter arrows are also especially deadly towards some of the bigger characters like the ones in the tank class, as you can fire at the floor in front of them and this will cause multiple fragmented arrows to bounce back up at your target from the floor. This can be very helpful at those closer ranges when you're finding it hard to hit someone with standard arrows, and can even be a good tactic to kill other, smaller players who have low health easily, as you won't have to be as accurate for the arrows to hit them. Practicing with the scatter arrows will allow you to judge angles better, and even hit hostiles hiding behind cover. And last but not least, Hanzo's ultimate ability is Dragon Strike, and this basically fires a special arrow that transforms into a pair of spiraling twin dragons. These dragons can pass through solid objects and surfaces and deal a very high amount of damage to anyone they come into contact with, and more damage is dealt depending on how close the other player is to the centre of the two dragons. The dragons don't move extremely quickly along their path, but down to how big they are, they can still be hard to avoid if they pass through a wall that an enemy is standing next to. When combined with your Sonic Arrows or Widowmaker's Infrasight, you can fire through walls and at areas full of enemies to take a few out. It's also a good way to prevent enemy attackers from taking objectives, as the dragons can block off routes and deny access to them, plus force players to move away out of the path of the dragons as they come spinning towards the objective point. So overall, Hanzo is better suited for dealing with targets at medium ranges, down to the targets being hard to hit over long distance, and with him not having any really strong abilities for killing at close range. He's definitely one of the more difficult heroes to do well with, and might take some practice to use, lining up shots, gauging arrow travel time and trajectory, and utilising his abilities to defend objectives. But when you get those arrows to land, they can hit very hard, though switching between arrow types on the go to cater for the situation is always the best way to play. So that's it for this one guys, I hope you liked the video, thumbs up if you did, and make sure you subscribe for plenty more Overwatch guides and other things in the future. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.